Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not Funny Guys Presents Go Team Venture. We're kicking along with Season 4, and today we're looking at Episode 3, Perchance to Dean, and Return to Malice. And let's start with Perchance to Dean, but before we get to that, please like, subscribe, follow, comment, share, get the word out here. We've got our main podcast for Off the Reels getting back and running, but got to keep this YouTube channel going strong to continue to do some dives into TV and stuff. So, Perchance to Dean, our first episode, episode 3 of the season, November 1st, 2009. We're still in part 1 of season 4, if you don't remember from the last video. So we got 8 episodes and then we jump ahead. So this was written by co-creator Jackson Public, and basically we find ourselves in a situation where we're in the past. We find out about an old Dean. I'm going to be calling him D19 because that's the specimen name, is ejected. And apparently did not die, but rather had been living as kind of a weird Quasimodo character in the attic of the Venture compound. In the meantime, Dean is being sort of introduced to real science by his dad. And also his muse of prog rock, which I think is absolutely hilarious. But before I get into that, one quick note: if you've not recognized, Perchance to Dean is a play on Shakespeare's Perchance to Dream, which comes to us from Hamlet, from the to be or not to be soliloquy. So, fun side note. So, of course, we do see ourselves in the past with Brock. That's when we get the D19 ejected. So this D19 is obviously probably the correct age of what the boys should be if they had not been constantly being cloned. In the meantime, Hank is supposedly being trained for his future job as a UPS delivery guy. UPS delivery guy shows up to give Hatred some stuff and gets all crazy paranoid about it. All kinds of references to The Shining. But D19 wants to be a real Dean. Every time I say that, by the way, I keep thinking about Community, but that's a separate TV show. Dean is, of course, trying to grow parts of his own hair, which is what will eventually lead to a funny encounter when he sees D19 and thinks that he created him like some sort of Frankenstein monster. In the meantime, when his father introduces him to the egg chair. Speaking with the air chair, this is the based on the Olivia Thor Larsen, a Danish designer. The egg chair, his muse, and bands like Asia, Yes, Crimson, King Crimson, Pink Floyd. When he plays, and he shows him cover art designed by Roger Dean, great cover artist of the era, and it's so funny. Well, this is going on. Dermot comes around, still butthurt over Dean beating him up back in season 3. Last time we saw each other at the day camp. And of course, there is a Shining reference. But what's even funnier is when Dean starts having these illusionary trip outs while he's listening to prog rock. We see things like out of the 2001 Space Odyssey sequence at the end where he turns into a baby. We've seen scenes that look like he's the Petruvian Man by Da Vinci. We also have the whole references where he's riding a dinosaur and a dragon that look like something out of the 1981 heavy metal cartoon. So they're off on their separate adventures. In the meantime, Hatred and Rusty are putting together these lifelike versions of him to put in the yard, planted to explosives, which interestingly enough will lead them to thinking at one point, or at least it'll lead the UPS and the sheriff guy to thinking that this is some sort of cult compound, which they do call it the compound. Even though the sheriff is eventually hesitant, saying apparently our friend has a history of this stuff, spreading things. Of course, Dermot and Hank accidentally run over a dead Dean body that the D19 was digging up, and freaks out. And there's a whole Fight Club reference where he's trying to try and burn his fingerprints off. He thinks he's running, so the sheriff is showing up to take down the compound. Very much like a Waco situation. At the same time, thinking there's some sort of cult. At the same time, Hank thinks they've come for him. He eventually will end up stealing the people mover and eventually end up driving past Dermot's place and dropping him off before taking it on the run or on the lam as the SWAT shows up. D19 apparently confronts Hank in the after he chases him into the panic room. there's a whole fire, and Hank's like, dire or bad, and it's like, yeah, I'm not, that doesn't help me. Um, this whole Waco raid goes, of course, D19 in chasing down Hank, actually tries to, runs into one of the Rusty Venture things, and he's been hallucinating a version of his father this whole time. He goes to hug it and blows him up. At this point, though, they had raided the compound, had Hatred and Venture in cuffs, and when the thing blows up, Venture's like, who the hell was that? And then we cut to the end where we find Hank not in Mexico, as he was supposedly running away to. In fact, he's actually just hallucinating about it, or daydreaming about it, while he's in the egg chair listening to music where he gets scolded. And apparently he was listening to one of Hatred's Jimmy Buffett CDs. But just a fun one here. I always enjoy the whole element of the clone kind of thing, what happens to the clones, and the fact that he was hallucinating a father trying to become a perfect dean, all kinds of weird kind of creepy body dysmorphia, crazy nonsense, because he's, of course, deformed and wants to then, he's sewn together a suit. It's very serial killer vibes. So who knows how old he is? Probably in his 20s at this point, if he is an original dean. But yes, probably the prog rock element here, because at one point when he falls out of the thing, they're like, oh no, he's in a Floyd hole. Pink Floyd. Fun times. All right. That's the end of that episode. Like, subscribe, as I was saying. Let's move on to the next one. All right. Our next episode, Return to Malice. And it is exactly what you think. We are returning to our gated community where the Monarch now resides. We also find that 21 is having a weird time letting go of 24 and is talking to his skull. And he's obsessed with hunting down 21's killer. And to do this, he makes a list. At the same time, the Monarch is super impressed with what 21 has done to shipshape and everything. And apparently, in a lot of ways, he's the real one in charge over at the Cocoon. This will become clear. But Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch, while they're over dinner, is very concerned about his mental state, over losing his best friend, talking to his skull. At one point, the Monarch and Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch, they're aware of 24, the skull in the quarters, but like Monarch blows it off. The Dr. and Mrs. girlfriend thinks it's, not good. And then 21 is talking to 24's skull and reveals his Lazarus project, his plan to go after the murderers of 24. He then changes it to another name because they start scrolling through a bunch, because he's apparently having a conversation with a version of 24 in his head. Eye for an eye now. And if you pause, when he puts the list up, there is the Ventures, Brock Sampson, the Moppets, OSI, Shape-Shifting Nightshade, love that one, but even better, Suicide, and Happenstance, which it's Happenstance. So that's a funny thing. Hatred is trying to, back at the compound, trying to toughen up the boys. And even makes an Eloy reference about their softness, which is a reference to the time machine, which is when Dean realizes that apparently he's borrowed his copy. Apparently back at the Monarch's house, Little Piggy goes to market is a weird foreplay thing for him and Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch, which is weird. He thinks he has a zit until he goes in the bathroom, where he finds out he's having an allergic reaction to whatever it was he had for dinner. 21 has now captured Hank and Dean after pretending to be Hatred and using members of the henchmen for his own thing. Apparently, Hatred was playing with himself, let's just say, while he was darted and had his costume stolen by 21, which is how he tricked Dean originally. He's, of course, mentioned the fact that he's recovering P-File and a member of the guild, so he knows that the Monarch has violated some serious rules here. Of course, Hatred then calls Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch, who threatens them. She tells them that they don't have the boys, but they plan to meet. They're going to meet at the old observatory, and when they get to this Malice community, Dr. Venture references, this is the set of the Gilmore Girls. But 21 is in some sort of treehouse, apparently, trying to water torture the boys into giving up things, so they've gone insane. It's not working. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, of course, leaves, and the Monarch gets all dark about things because he thinks she's going to do an interview and she's going to show off her clothing. He gets mad at her, and then he goes to the cocoon, which is when he's there and he's deformed, no one recognizes him, and he also comes to realize that the whole place answers to 21 and not him. Kind of emasculating. 21 is telling Hank and Dean about what happened after 24. He went back to being Gary, his original identity, living his mom's, podcasting his life, but this wasn't working for him. So then he set out to find himself and get some in shape somewhat. That's where the whole LARPing gang and the X1 that we saw back in episode 1. He trained henchmen to become, and comes to the realization that it's his cowardice that got 24 killed. He has an epiphany by basically doing talk therapy. Of course, the Monarch is having this allergic reaction. Hatred and Venture have gone to Hatred's old house, where apparently Princess Tiny Feet is there, engaging in some, shall we say, BDSM party, which gets all Hatred all messed up. And of course, 21 in the cocoon is referred to as General 21. And when the Monarch then leaves after being turned away for drinks, he runs into Hank and Dean, who've now been released, and like gets on them about go home, call a cab. Dr. Mrs. Monarch meets Rusty and them at the observatory. It's a laser observatory. Apparently, she's only heard about it, but like Rusty was there when it was used. And this idea that there's this crossover, and she's like, oh, that was in an episode of the Rusty Venture cartoon. And this whole parallelism between what was real and what was the cartoon. He ends up calling the boys because apparently Hatred did not think to call their risk communicators, and they're back home. And they tell him, oh, we were in Gary's tree fort. The Monarch is wandering this forest area in his backyard, and he comes upon the tree fort, goes in, he has a heart-to-heart with 21. Who gets chewed out. He chews out 21 over kidnapping the boys and his authority in the cartoon, and then basically admits that everything he does, he hates. It's pure in him. And 21 promises that he's his man, and sort of like rededicates himself, and like the Monarch's like, yeah, you better not forget that. And then we have the afterwards where we have someone marks the Ventures off the list. We don't see a hand, we just see a pen scratching it out, and then 21 comes in. So who was marking out the thing? No one else is in the room. 24's skull has moved. Though apparently Dr. Mrs. the Girlfriend is on the cover doing a sexy little spread for Modern Enemy Monthly. Of course, 21's all for that. And the skull, like I said, has moved. So just a fun little creepy 24. Dead, no dead. Okay. Who knows? All right. But that brings us to the end of another episode, episode 4. Next time, we'll be looking at the Revenge Society, which means we'll be seeing the return of Phantom Limb and self-medication, which I'm pretty sure is that's the Boy Adventure Therapy Group. That's a great episode, but you'll have to wait till Wednesday for that one. But we'll be back then talking about some more episodes. In the meantime, like, subscribe, follow along, enjoy. And if you haven't done so already, go check out our podcast over on Acast. That link will be in the description below. Check those things out if you want to do more about movies and other things like that. While over here, we're doing the television shows. But until next time, go Team Venture. Say not funny guys again.
Not funny guys again.
No, can you say not funny guys?